What's up, guys? Welcome to night 26 of SPOOKTOBER21. Welcome to Project Potter. My name is Kyle, guys, your host. Thanks for checking out Project Potter, guys. This is our Spooktober content. Every single night, we're bringing you spooky content. We've been doing movie reviews to kind of finish out this the month here, guys. So we're in the home stretch. We are doing It Chapter 1, the 2017 one, not the original. I haven't seen the original, but this is the second time I've seen this movie, and this is just a really good movie overall. So I watched a couple Ghostbuster reviews after my review, and apparently I'm the outlier and I'm the only one that doesn't like that movie. So it's okay. I'm going to stick by my opinion. Hopefully you guys will give me another chance here for another night of Spooktober. So yeah, guys, It, the 2017 movie, the remake. What we're going to be doing is a quick recap, a best scene, worst scene, or best scenes, worst scenes, favorite character, worst character, score to 10. You guys already know how it goes. So appreciate you guys stopping by. If you do like the content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. And away we go, Georgie. Kicking off with a recap. So, basic premise. We start off with a sick Bill. I don't know why they gave him like a cold, I guess, so he couldn't go outside with Georgie. I don't know. It was kind of weird. But older brother Bill, younger brother Georgie. Georgie is, of course, still a really cute kid. He's helping him build a boat, and he's like, hey, Bill's like, Georgie, I need you to go down in the basement, give me some of that wax so that your boat can go real fast. And then he's like, can you come with me? And he's like, nah, bro, you're going to go down by yourself. To the cellar that has no lights. Where is Roger from Roger Perone when you need him, dude? Putting in the little light in the cellar. So Georgie goes down there. It's a terrifying cellar, but he gets the wax. Oh, he sees Pennywise's eyes, like just the eyes, and then he turns. I think there is a light or something, and he shines a flashlight on it, and it's like just a paint bucket. But we know it's not just a paint bucket. So he goes back up there. They get the wax. It gets the SS Georgie, and he's like, here you go. And then it's like, remember, boats are she's. And they're like, okay, go outside. And then Georgie goes out there on his own. And I guess because Bill is sick, he can't go out there. He probably got sick from being out in the rain. I don't know. But Georgie goes out there, and there's a nice current flowing down the street, and then he puts his boat down there, and he's trying to chase it, but because of the wax, it's going so fast, and the current's carrying it. So Georgie has to run after it, and he's like, no, because it goes down into the sewer opening, and that is where we get Mr. Pennywise, the dancing clown. This scene is great because Georgie's there, and he leans down, and he's like, no, and then he sees the eyes, and he's like, shit. And then Pennywise comes out, and he goes, hey, Georgie. And he's like, I forget what he says, but it's like he emerges from the shadows, and it's like such an unsettling thing because it's like he's standing down there, and Georgie is like sitting there like, the fuck is going on here? So he talks to Pennywise, and they have like a conversation where he's like, oh, don't you want your boat, Georgie? He's like, come on down. Then they're like, don't you like ice cream, Georgie? And he's like, oh, I shouldn't take things from strangers. And he's like, I'm not a stranger. He's like, I'm Pennywise the clown. And he's like, don't you like popcorn? Don't you like it? He's like, pop, pop, pop. And I'm like, oh, the guy who plays Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård, just amazing, dude. Like, he's so good. Really creepy, and obviously like the makeup and the costume design is a big part of that. But Bill just absolutely, that is like the Pennywise now. So I know the original version, he looks a little bit different, and I've never seen that, but I'll probably watch it at some point, but that's not Pennywise to me. This is my Pennywise, where it's like, this is the one I know now, and the one that's done so well. And obviously this movie took off, and I think it had huge success at the box office, but eventually Georgie goes in there, and he's like, come get your boat, Georgie. And he finally reaches in, and then Pennywise extends his giant, disgusting mouth and like bites off Georgie's arm. And I was like, Jesus, dude. Then he goes he falls in the street, and then Pennywise just reels him in. And he just pulls that little boy down there. And then we kind of get a cool shot where it goes underneath the sewer, and then it cuts out, and we have the It title card. Then we get introduced to this cast, guys, and this cast is so good. The one knock I would say on it is that it feels a little too much like Stranger Things, and that's because they literally have one of the kids from Stranger Things. They have Mike, who is Finn Wolfhard, which, what a name, dude, who plays Richie Tozier. And so he's in it, but it's like, man, they just killed it with the child casting here. They have the new kid who's like the heavier kid, and he's really nerdy and stuff, and no one likes him. And there's an amazing scene where Beverly comes out and she's like the really cute girl that all the guys like, and there's some funny scenes about that. But she goes over and she's like, hey, new kid, and he's like, listen to music, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, oh, he's got like a project or whatever, and he's like, I was gonna go that way or whatever, and she's like, the bully's over there, and he's like, I don't know. That was kind of weird, but she's basically like, oh, let me sign your yearbook because it's the last day of school, and they're like dumping their books into the trash can and stuff. And this poor kid's just gonna ride his bike home. And then Beverly is just like, yeah, let me sign your yearbook. And it's so sad, dude, because she opens it up and it's completely blank. And she sees that and she's like, oh. But then she signs it and she puts like little hearts and she's like, stay cool. She's like, what are you listening to? And it's like New Kids on the Block. And she's like, aren't you the new kid? It's like, aren't you the new kid on the block? But Bev is really sweet here because she signs it with a couple hearts and she's like, stay cool, new kid. And then she like, he's like, you too, see you later. And he like, she walks away. And then he goes, don't go, girl. And then he's like, that's another song. And it's like, I got some Superbad vibes in this movie. It's great. But yeah, so we have, looking at here, guys. So Sophia Lillis plays Bev. She's great. We get Finn Wolfhard as Richie. We get Jordan Martell as Bill. We get Jack Dylan Grazer as Eddie. Chosen Jacobs as Mike, at which Mike, he was the outsider in this movie. He's the one that I don't think fit in really well. The new kid is Ben, played by Jeremy Ray Taylor. And then we had Stan, played by Wyatt Oleff. These people have some dope-ass names, dude. And that's really it. And then there's like some other characters, but that's our main crew. And man, the chemistry between them is just so awesome and so good and hilarious and funny and realistic. And when you're going to do a movie about kids growing up or kids going through puberty, you have to get the right age kids. And I love when it's like authentic and they get these kids that are like either that age or like slightly older, and it's like, it's so believable and it's great. It's instead of getting like 25-year-old that's playing like a 14-year-old, like, oh man, get off my back. It's like, bro, you're 25. What are you doing? But yeah, they're excellent guys. So basically the movie goes through and they all see Pennywise at different points, and it's pretty cool. So like, the new kid, Ben, yes. So Ben, he's like in the library, and then all of a sudden, like Pennywise starts chasing him, and so he's like looking through history, and he's like flipping through all the pages, and then he sees like a dead kid in the tree because they're learning about the town of Derry, and the town of Derry is awesome. But Ben is there, and like Pennywise chases him, and he like runs into the librarian, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, didn't you see like the clown? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he like is embarrassed and leaves. Bev goes into, she has a really controlling and sexually abusive, I think it's heavily hinted at, father. And so he's a piece of shit, but we'll get into that later. So Bev goes into like the bathroom after her dad yells at her, and she's like cutting all her hair off. And then she like realizes it looks kind of nice, but then she's sitting on the bathroom, and then the sink, like, first of all, she hears noises from the sink, and then they're like, Beverly, come help us, Beverly. And then she's like, and then she like gets closer, and then she goes while her dad's asleep, and she gets like a tape measure, and she puts the tape measure all the way down. And I'm like, what? No, walk away, man. Don't investigate. So she pulls it back up, and it's really gross because it's like bloody and there's like clumps of hair, and she's like, ugh. Like, I was like, I don't like that. And then the sink explodes with blood, and the whole thing is covered in blood. And she's screaming, and her dad walks in, and he's like, what? And she's like, the blood. He's like, what blood? And we're like, oh, so he can't see it. So that's kind of the theme there, because each of the kids sees the clown in a different way, or Pennywise, I should say. So Mike, who's like the outsider, his job is to like kill lambs or sheep with like a gun through the brain. It's really weird, but he can't. He's like empathetic, so he can't do it. And then his dad, or it's like a stepdad, I think, because he says, "You're not my dad." He's like, "You need to do the job," or whatever. And then he like gets kicked out into like an alleyway, and then there's like an incinerator, like a burned warehouse, and where he sees Pennywise in there, and it's really messed up. Then the door flies open. It's just like a butcher or chef or whatever. There's bullies in this movie where they like, it starts off with the bully Patrick, and then he's like replaced with another bully with a mullet, which was weird. It's like, just have one bully, dude, because the first bully Patrick gets killed off with Pennywise in the sewers. I'm like, great. Because there's like he's like using the hairspray and the lighter, and he's like, I'm going to find you. And then the zombies or whatever find him. It's like its iterations. And that was great because he goes missing, but he's dead as shit. So that kid got his comeuppance, but then they just replaced him with another bully. And I was like, what? Why don't you? It was strange. But we get Stanley, who I actually forget how he sees Pennywise, but he's like the rabbi's son, but he's like not focused on the thing, or he can't like memorize it. And his father is kind of an asshole too. And I was like, what's the deal with the bad dads in here? And then obviously we get for Bill, he has Georgie's experience, and he's like seeing Pennywise because he gets lured like into the basement, and then like Pennywise pretends to be Georgie. And he's like, you'll float too. And you'll float too. I was like, oh, that's kind of a weird line. And then at the end of the movie, obviously we go into the well where Pennywise is, and there's all these kids floating that he was like going to eat or has taken captive. And you'll float too. I was like, oh, it was like when the credits rolled, I was like, I gotcha. But yeah, just kind of jumping all over the place, guys. Here, they all have their own visions of Pennywise. And then what's his name? It's Eddie. I didn't even recognize him in his IMDb picture because it doesn't look like him. The kid that breaks his arm and it has loser, and then it says lover over it. He sees Pennywise at the beginning at the burned down house, and then Pennywise is like chilling there, and he's got all the balloons in there. And the red balloon is like his thing, but he's freaking out, and he runs away. But then they all get together, and they're like, the clown, they're like, we saw it. And they all talk about how they saw different things, and they're like, okay, we got to team up and work together. And then they say like all drains lead to the float, or you'll float down here, or whatever. They say it again. And then they eventually go to like the projector room, and they like find out that all the sewers or all the pipes like lead to that one house that has a well in it for some reason. Which is like burned and abandoned, and they're like walking by and they're seeing creepy stuff, and they're dealing with Pennywise, but then they're also dealing with like the bullies kind of, which is weird, and the bullies are just douchebags. And at the end, one of the guys wants to shoot a cat, and then his dad comes out, and he actually shoots a couple times at the ground, and he's like, I think its name is Henry or something, and he like starts shivering, and his dad actually says, look at him now, boys. And he's like, the way to break down a paper thin man, he's like, just put a little fear in him. And I was like, I think I butchered that line a little bit, but I was like, that's a great line, dude. And then his poor dad, Pennywise hypnotizes him, and he sends him a fucking pocket knife in the mail because of the red balloons on his mailbox. And then he ends up killing his dad. And I was like, he didn't deserve that. He just like, his dad's sleeping on the couch, and he just goes over and then just like opens the knife on his neck. And he's like, oh. And then he's like, you son of a bitch. Like, he doesn't say that, but no, that's, I'm sure, what he was thinking. So he bleeds out, and then that kid has to, like, he's like being controlled by Pennywise, and he's like, kill them all. And he goes after them. But it's weird because he comes after Mike when they're going down the well, and then Mike just like fucking kicks him. And he's like, dude, you're going to die at the end of the well. It was a weird, like, sub story that I don't think needed to be there. But yeah, we get all these great scenes, guys. The best part about this movie, though, is just the chemistry between the cast. This movie is genuinely really funny. Like, there's so many funny lines where they're like, these kids feel like they are actually friends, and they're messing around, and they're like saying like they're dropping F-bombs and stuff. And there's a great scene at the watering hole, the canyon, whatever. They're all like, except they're all wearing like tidy whities, but they're all in like matching underwear, which is really weird because you think one kid would have boxers or something. But these kids are hanging out just in their underwear, and they're like on a huge cliff, and they're like, I don't know, like, I don't want to splat. And if you jump high enough, dude, it's like hitting concrete. So it's like, this is a little too high. But basically, after Bev cuts her hair, she's like, I'll do it. And then she like takes off her shirt and stuff, and she's just in her underwear basically, or like in a bikini basically. And she jumps down, and they're like, oh my God, a girl just showed us up. And then they all jump in there. There's a really nice scene where they're playing around and flirting, and they do a really great job of being like that puberty like crush, because it's a great scene where Bev is laying out, and I'm kind of, so I think what we might do, sorry to cut myself off, I guess. I think what we might do for this review, guys, we might do like a recap and then mix it in sort of with the best scenes, because that's kind of what I'm doing now anyway. So this is a recap / best scenes, I guess. So it's a great scene where they're all laying there and they're all staring at Bev, because it's like the first it's like this attractive girl that's hanging out with them, and she's cool, and like they're hanging out, and they've all just been like playing like Dungeons and Dragons and shit together, and like it's just like all these nerdy kids, and they've never like dreamed about hanging out with a girl, and this girl's just chilling with them, and she's like sunbathing, and she's looking there, and they're all staring, and then she like gets up and like goes to look at them, and they're all like, they're like, they like literally start all like getting like going through the bags and shit. It's so funny to like make it seem like they weren't staring. But that's how they start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and they find out through a terrifying scene where they go at the projector and they put up the map and they say, okay, this is where all the roads lead or all the drains lead, and they're like, the well house is where we need to go. And they're like, nah, fuck that. That's way too scary. And then the projector starts going on its own, dude, and it's so well done, and it's like, because they're showing like, okay, go here, and then the projector starts getting faster and faster, and they're like, what is this? And they're showing like pictures of Georgie. It zooms in, and then it zooms in on one of the parents or whatever, and it slowly turns into Pennywise's face, and they're like, shut it off. They're like, what the fuck is that? Like, turn that shit off. Pennywise is like looking at them, and then they like kick the projector, and then like it goes to the side, and then it still shows Pennywise, and they're like, oh my god. And in my head, I'm thinking like, dude, pull the plug. Like, what are you doing? And so he actually like jumps out of the projector, and it's a really awesome effect, and actually like got a jump scare out of me because I was like, oh shit, did not remember that part. And he's literally like, looks like larger than life, and he's looking at them, and it's like a fourth wall type of deal where he's looking around, and then they're in the garage, and they finally, I think it's Ben who puts the garage up, and then like that's how the projector stops. But they're like, Pennywise has seen us. Like, they don't say Pennywise, they don't know his name, but they say it's seen us, it knows where we are, like we gotta go. And it's just great. But a few jokes here, guys, I didn't mention. They're like going through the houses, and it's cool to see. The one, I guess the parents all kind of suck in this movie, but the one semi-redeemable parent, I guess, is what's his name? Eddie. Yeah. Eddie's mom, except she's kind of controlling, but she's the most normal, I guess, where she's like sitting on the couch, and she's like, what did you forget? And she like makes him kiss on the cheek before he goes, and then she gets mad at them later because she comes over after they get out of the house, and they're all fucked up. This kid has like scars on him, and like his arm's broken, and she's like, you did this, and she's like, stay away. And for some reason, everyone says that Beverly is like a slut, but she's literally like, dude, I've kissed one guy. So it's like the vicious rumors. And I kind of like this part because it just shows you how dumb it is that like literally one person can get, especially when you're that age, one person will say one thing and you're like, oh, we must believe it. And they're like, oh, have you heard about her? She's sleeping with the whole like 20 guys or whatever. And then it's like literally just kids that age just will spread. It's like the telephone game, dude, where it's like you say it and then it's never what it actually is. And so when they're there's like a great scene where they're cleaning the blood up in the bathroom, and because she's like, can you guys see it? My dad couldn't see it. But he's a piece of shit asshole anyway. So she doesn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And they're like, yeah, we can see it, and we need to clean this up. And so there's like a nice bonding scene. And then like Ben, who's like the bigger kid, he's like really into Bev the whole time, but he's like really sweet with her. But of course, like she's not interested in Ben because she's just, I guess, interested in Bill, but there's a weird scene at the end. But anyway, guys, there's some funny jokes where like they're going through the house, and then they're going to get like pills, and they're like, oh, this your birth control up here? And he's like, yeah, I'm saving it for your sister. And I was like, oh. There's just some really funny like moments that when they initially go in the sewers, that he's like, oh, just letting you know that's like piss and shit water. And he's like, okay. He's like, have you ever heard of a staph infection? And I'm just like, man, the cast is just like chef's kiss, dude. The cast is so great. But yeah, they eventually, guys, they go down, kind of accelerating to the end here. They go down to the well, and then there's like so many great sequences where like initially when they first see Pennywise actually going back, they stab him with like a fucking huge, like almost like a piece of a fence. And so he's like starts bleeding or whatever, but he's like creating all these illusions where it's like 3 doors and it says like very scary, scary, not scary at all. And they take the not scary at all door, and I'm like, no, bro, you have to go through the very scary door because that's probably not going to be scary. He's trying to trick you. Like, that's the whole point. But they're seeing all these things, and it's like, oh, this is all fake. And like, they put Eddie in like, or the illusions put Eddie in like inside of a mattress, and he's like shaking. And for some reason, when Pennywise chases after them, he like shakes. He does like the little, like he does that, and he like runs after them. When Billy sees Georgie in his basement, that scene's disturbing. But he like runs after him, and then he like flops on the stairs, and he's like, and then he just like like slides back into the water. And I was like, can you just get up and walk, dude? Like, come on, aren't you some sort of deity? You can just like, I don't know. I'll get into that in just a bit, guys. But yeah, basically they have this big fight with Pennywise, and then they start to realize that if they're not afraid of him, Pennywise like feeds off of their fear, and that's how he's like effective. So once they stop being afraid of him, like Bev was the first one not to be afraid of him, he has no power, and so then they start beating him up with all these different things. And there's like they're doing like basically like a group combo move in a video game where they're like kicking him, and then one kid hits him with a pipe, and they stab him in the back. And he's like he starts kind of morphing down because he has a couple faces where it's like the Pennywise face, and then he has like I think the creepier like face that's like kind of like warped a little bit, and it's like this almost like a woman's face. And then it's they kick him back, and then eventually he like goes down to the well, and his face like starts deteriorating. That's really cool. And then he says fear, and then he falls, and they're like, oh, but it obviously like it at the end of this movie they say it chapter 1, and so it's like they knew that there was going to be a second one. And I don't know if it was knowledge that there would be a second one at the time of this release, but you obviously knew because they didn't like burn him alive or whatever, or like whatever. He just fell down the well. You were like, oh, okay, well, you obviously know he's coming back. And then at the end, they have a scene where they do a blood oath where they say, if he comes back, we need to swear that we come back too. And they're like, okay, deal. Yeah, they fight Pennywise. They get Bev back. There is a cool scene with Bev when she is down there by herself against Pennywise. She's like, I'm not afraid of you. And he's like, you will be. And then he opens his fucking mouth, his demon mouth, and he opens it up, and there's actually like 3 like yellow lights in there, and that's like what hypnotizes or like possesses her. One thing I did not like, I will say, so we're now, I'm just going to clarify, guys, we are now doing a recap / best scenes and then / worst scenes, although this is probably the only like worst scene. There's only a couple bad scenes, I think, in this movie, so this review is kind of going to be jumbled together, but it's just easier that way. So the one thing I don't like about this movie, or one of the scenes that really was like the one scene where I was like, that's kind of dumb. Bev is like floating up in the air and she's possessed, and they see all the kids up there, and it's a really cool scene. And then they pull Bev down. So first of all, they can like just slowly pull her down, which I was like, she's seemingly possessed up there. You think there would be like really strong magic or whatever, where they can't just pull her down, but they just kind of like lightly tug on her and she comes down. And then Ben, who's the kid, the bigger kid, the new kid that's been obsessed with her the whole time, who took a quick look at her like fucking bedroom when they went in and cleaned the bathroom, he like made sure she wasn't looking, and she was talking to Billy. And then he like looked down and he's like, cool, girl stuff. And so then he goes down there and he's like, I think he writes her a poem or whatever. Like he slips it into her like backpack or whatever. But it's very obvious that he's like obsessed with this girl, and he's really sweet, and she doesn't give him the time of day because girls that age wouldn't do that. Then hugs her, and he's like, why isn't she waking up? And then he kisses her, and I was like, okay, well, we knew that was coming. But then I thought he was going to be like, what? I thought it would work. But then it does work, and she just wakes up, and I was like, okay, dude, she's like possessed. And then he just kisses her, and it's like, oh. And then they have I guess a cute moment where he says like, my heart is with you or whatever, and she's like, oh, it's weird because they haven't, other than that first scene, it's mostly been him admiring her, and they haven't really had much chemistry. But then again, at the end of the movie, guys, this is another scene I don't really like. They're all leaving, and it's cool because they leave one by one, and then Billy like runs after her, and then he kisses her. And then she like kisses him back. And I was like, you guys have had no chemistry in this movie. You had literally like one scene where you were talking and it felt friendly. It wasn't even like romantic. It wasn't like a flirty thing. Ben was way more into Beverly than Billy was. So I think they touch on that in the second one. So I think they might be saying that, but I don't remember. But for the purposes of this movie and like making it a standalone story, I was like, oh, dude, like it's like you just had the girl kiss the main character. Just because I was like, there was really no chemistry between Billy and Bev. So it would have been much nicer if like Ben was like sweet, and then he was like, oh, okay, see you later. And then she was like, oh, hey, Ben. She's like, and then she kisses him or whatever. But I don't know. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much how the movie wraps up. But yeah, just a great movie. So guys, because we did kind of best scenes and worst scenes, really, there's not much. Oh, I guess one more worst scene I want to throw in here, guys. The scene, it just not even really a worst scene, just like when Bev goes to sneak out right before she fucking like knocks her dad out and probably killed him. She goes to like sneak out, and then he's got a lock on the door, and he's like, where are you going? He's like, where are you sneaking out to? And She's like, nowhere. And he's like, y'all prettied up. And she's like, dude, I wear this every day. And then he's like, you know, a lot of people in town have been telling me a lot of stories about you hanging out with those boys all alone. And she's like, dude, they're just friends. And he's like super controlling and super protective. And then like they get in a fight where like he throws her to the ground or whatever. And then he like almost like mounts her. And it's really creepy because he's just like, do they know you're my girl? And she like kicks him in the nuts or whatever and punches him and runs into the bathroom and then eventually knocks him out with a vase. But I'm like, oh, this is like so sad and disturbing because it's like it's very heavily implied that he like sexually molested her or he's like really creepy. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it was really good. It was really good to drive. Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if they really needed that because you could have just had him be like kind of a dickhead to her. And then she would have been like, oh, and she just like runs away like Mary Jane does in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. But they had like a weird, creepy sexual element with it. And I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, sexual abuse doesn't happen, sadly, with parents, but I was just like, I felt like it was kind of forced and it was a scene I think you could have made him an asshole and she still could have justified like knocking him out or killing him without him being like over the line creepy, like David Last of Us vibe. So, yeah, that was like kind of the only other bad scene that I could think of, but we are here, guys, to discuss the best character, and it's got to be Ben, the kid from the block, I should say. There's also a really funny scene where they're like in Ben's room and he's like got he's doing like the Charlie Kelly, Pepe Sylvia line sequence where he's got everything hung up on the walls there. And then it's funny because like his door shuts or Beverly shuts his door and then there's like a zoom in and it's like New Kids on the Block and she's like, and he's like, okay, like, so that's why they had such chemistry. And I was like, why aren't you kissing Ben, dude? But yeah, Ben was awesome, dude. He was like super charming and he's so sweet where he was like, he's just the nicest kid. And he was like, he got fucking cut a couple times. There's a gross scene where like mentally gross where the bullies are beating him up initially and then they like cut an H into him. I think it's Patrick or it's the other. Oh no, I think it's the second bully that ends up getting kicked down the well. They literally take a knife and cut an H into him. And I was like, damn, dude, this kid got fucked up. And then he ends up running away. And that's when he runs into them. And they're like, what the hell happened to you? And they have to go into the store. And there's another nice scene there, guys, where I'm sorry, but I forgot that scene where they go into the store and they're like, I can't buy that or whatever. And Beverly is getting like tampons. And she's like, she sees one girl that threw trash on her in the beginning. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? Like these girls were so mean where Beverly's like smoking like a cigarette or whatever in the bathroom. She takes those cigarettes outside and she's in the bathroom and they get the trash and these girls who are so mean, they fucking pour trash on her. And the girl's like, I hope you smell better. Or she's like, you'll smell better now. And I was like, dude, I hate this girl. I wish Pennywise could have come up and just eaten them right there, dude. I would have been like, yo, you deserve that. And then that same girl ends up working at like CVS or whatever later. So she's just kind of like a bitchy the whole time. And I don't know why she was in this movie. But yeah, Ben was like super sweet towards Beverly. And he was like so obviously like obsessed with her. And again, I don't know if they touch into that too. So they might be citing it up. I don't remember. But I was just like, man, he was like funny. And he was nice and he was brave. And it's like he was just the classic, like, do the right thing character. And when all of it, because some of his friends were like freaking out. And it's weird because he was the new kid and he kind of just seamlessly fit in there. Mike was the only outsider, I thought, where Mike didn't really belong. But we'll get into that, guys. But yeah, I thought Ben was just first of all, the acting for these young men here and this young lady in what's her name? Sophia Lillis, phenomenal across the board. Everyone was so good. Like I was impressed with the acting level. They had great chemistry together and it looks like they were just being kids, but like following along, some really good dialogue with the script too. But I just think it worked really well and they were all excellent. But I think Ben has to stick out for me just a little bit more than the rest because he fit right in. He was funny and he was sweet and charming and nice. And yeah, Ben was my favorite character in this one. Okay, guys, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but my least favorite character or the worst character, I think, was Mike. You know what? It's actually a tie between Mike and Stan because those are the two characters I thought in an excellently cast movie where I thought everyone played a nice role. Stan and Mike, I thought were weird, like really weird. Except Mike was like the outsider character, so I was like, okay, I don't even know why. Why do you have a new kid and an outsider? That seems strange. But But Stanley, I like forgot he was in the movie half the time. Or like he didn't have any courage, right? And it wasn't like a thing where he gets character development and he gets courage. He's like, oh, I want to stay outside, and like, dude, we all have to go in the house. And then he like eventually ends up getting like his face eaten almost off by one of Pennywise's like clones or whatever, because it like retracts the face of the mouth. Oh, that's gross. But then he starts freaking out and he's like, you're the one who brought me in here. I was like, dude, you're all in this together. Like, stop complaining. But Stanley kind of sucked. I didn't really care about him. And then Mike was like, oh, I have to be the outsider. Like, it was weird because he was just like, oh, guys, I would love to help you, but I'm the outsider because I just got to be the outsider. And I was like, I don't know. It's like, why can't you just try and help the kids or whatever? And neither of them really had like their heroic moments or like their like, they're like aha moments. It was like they both just kind of felt like they didn't belong. And considering it was really weird considering like the rest of the cast was so great. And it was like this, but a lot like Stranger Things where like that group just works and you know it. And again, Mike from Stranger Things is in this movie. So maybe that was part of it, but I love their chemistry, and Mike and Stanley, I thought just stood out. Excuse me. Now I'm stuttering like Billy. I thought Mike and Stanley stood out like two sore thumbs, and I just thought both of them were pretty forgettable performances, honestly. Okay, guys, that brings us to the score. To be honest with you guys, I had a lower score in my head before I started talking about this, and sometimes this happens with reviews where you'll start going, you're like, oh, well, actually, I really enjoyed this scene, and this scene was great, and oh, this was great, and this wasn't work so much. I originally had like low 8s, guys, but this, I'm going to say, is a 9.4. And the only reason that I'm not putting this higher is because, honestly, I didn't think Pennywise was really scary. When I was watching The Conjuring the other night, I was tense, I was sweaty, I was on the edge of my seat, and I know it's more grounded in reality, and they do have the demonic possession at the end there, but it's not over the top like this one is. But Pennywise, the eyes were terrifying as they're behind me here. And when he was like in the shadows, that was creepy. When he was just kind of standing there, even though his design is really cool, his voice, even though it's kind of funny to mimic, it's not really creepy. Like it's kind of funny. Like I was like laughing at some of the scenes, and I was just like, oh, The Conjuring where I was like terrified or like tense or scared. I was like, oh my God, like I'm nervous. In this, I was like, oh, these are scary scenes, but this is almost like gory scary instead of like psychological scary. So like for me, I didn't really find Pennywise scary. I would say actually, like, I don't know, it's just weird because sometimes he was just like a nice clown, and then he turned into like a monster. And I understand that like he's trying to be nice to the kids to an extent so he can lure them in to eat them. But I was like, the cast, the score, the film, the pacing, it was all really good. I will say this movie, though, probably it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think, probably could have used like 15 to 20 minutes less. Like they could have cut off a little bit of that. But overall, I think it goes pretty quick and the pacing was pretty good. But yeah, everything else was great. The cast really carried this movie, and I thought it was just so great and funny and well written. And the action was cool. There were some genuinely like really terrifying moments where Pennywise is like in one of the closets one time when they're in the house, and he like morphs out of it, but he's like, it's all gross looking. Maybe I'll put it in here if I can find it, but yeah, it's just it's a really, really good movie. But the only reason, like I said, it's not a little bit higher for me is because I didn't find Pennywise scary really at all, even though I love his design. I think it's a really cool design. I just wish they would have used like a deeper voice or a darker voice, or had him speak less, because when he was like, hey Georgie, I was like, okay, like this is just it's just some dude trying to be your friend, bro. Like he's just trying to be like, he's like, come on in here, Georgie. And I was like, Georgie, go on in, dude. Seems like a nice guy. Like maybe he's got a PS5 hooked up, dude. Maybe like you get some Xbox going. I don't know. Like get some candy, get some soda pop. Like maybe it's not such a bad time in the sewer. Like there's piss and shit water in there, but maybe we get past it. So, but yeah, seriously, guys, it was a really, really great movie. And this is the second time I've seen it. So I'm really glad that it held up, and it's like well shot and the effects are cool and all of that. But just a couple things I think that hold it back from being really, truly great. But I would rewatch this movie, I think, at any time. Okay, guys, that's it. That's another nice Spooktober 21. We are getting towards the end here, guys. We have, 5 days left, I think, now after tonight. So thanks for checking out Project Potter, guys, as Halloween nears. Appreciate you guys stopping by. I've been your host, Kyle. If you did like the content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. And until tomorrow night, guys, bye, Georgie.